the age of a high schooler. He had this thing where he'd try to be the cool teacher who related to teenage drama. He'd ask about school parties, who was dating who, everything. And at the time, some people thought it was cool that a teacher was interested in their lives, but there were these moments that even as a dumb teenager, you knew something was off. Like he'd make comments about what girls were wearing, not directly to them, but he'd be like, which doesn't sound weird, until you realize that this was the tone he said it in. Oh, Sarah, that's a nice dress. Now, if you don't think I should be put in prison just after doing that interpretation, I don't know what to say. Some girls hated his class because of how creepy he was, but other girls loved it because, well, if you were a girl in his class, passing was way easier. I knew a girl who got a B+ on a terrible essay she wrote about the Revolutionary War, and the reason I know it's terrible is because the paper was supposed to be on the Cold War, but what grade did I get on that assignment? I got a C. Now, I'm not saying my essay was amazing, but I do know that I at least wrote it on the right war. The pattern was obvious to anyone paying attention. He'd do that thing where he's half sitting on students' desks while talking to the class, but only the girls' desks, and he'd make jokes that were just slightly too personal. There was this unspoken understanding among the girls in the school that you didn't want to be alone in Mr. Peterson's class. If he asked you to stay after, you'd bring a friend or make up an excuse why you can't. But here's the crazy part. So every school had a teacher like this, right? A little creepy, but only inside school. Like once you left school, you didn't have to worry about them. Well, Mr. Peterson was different because he would try following students through social media. Was this illegal? I don't think technically, but it was weird. And one of the girls who had him as a teacher decided to accept his follow request just to see if he would do anything weird. And as far as I know, he never DM'd her, but he would always comment on all her photos. Didn't say anything unusual, but the fact that he was commenting at all was weird. And this was about 8 years ago. So you may be wondering, where is he now? Well, he was actually on a YouTube video last week. Yeah, that's right. He was on a Gideon video. No, I'm just kidding. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was on there soon. Now, thankfully, the creep teacher usually just taught high school classes, which didn't make it any better, but at least he wasn't teaching younger kids. Because have you ever noticed how the types of teachers schools have changes as you go to different grades? Elementary school teachers were basically just your second parents. You were still at the age where you're pooping your pants in class like every other day, so they couldn't even really focus on actually teaching. And you were scared of the teachers. Like my elementary school classes always had these colored cards you'd get. Green meant you were doing good, but red meant bad. So if you got a red card, it was basically like getting a red card in football. You were cooked. Then you move on to middle school, where for the first time, you're actually starting to learn stuff beyond just addition and subtraction and how to not poop your pants. And now, instead of just having one teacher, you had 6 or 7 all teaching different subjects. School's getting harder, you're going through puberty, and all the teachers are telling you, you better not mess around. They won't let this slide in high school. Then you get to high school, and they let literally everything slide. Like everything. Because high school teachers either acted like the president who didn't let you do anything, so you hated going to their class, but the other half of high school teachers were just people who had straight up given up on life by this point. They were just trying to make it to retirement. You could do literally whatever you wanted in these classes, which brings me to my next subject, the chill teacher. The chill teacher was usually a coach for one of the school sports teams who just needed a teaching job to legally coach. They literally had the I'm just here so I don't get fined attitude about their job. Everyone was getting an A in their class no matter what. Show up or don't, they couldn't care less. The only thing they cared about is when that last period bell rang and they got to leave the classroom and head to the football field. I will never forget the one class I had with our football coach because it was amazing. I had a teacher named Coach Matthews who taught physical education theory. And you may be saying, I've never heard of that class before. Yeah, me neither. All of us students were pretty sure they just made it up simply so he had a class to teach. And let me tell you, this man put about as much effort into teaching as this security guard did trying to stop people trespassing. He would do the same thing every day. Put on a documentary about sports and then fall asleep at the desk. I'm not exaggerating about the sleeping thing just to make the story sound better either. He had a full routine. He'd start the video, tell us to take notes on it, then sit down, put his feet up, and within 10 minutes, he was out, completely snoring. We'd have full conversations at normal volume and he would not wake up. His grading system was the most simple thing ever. You either got 100% or 0. That's it. If you showed up, you got the 100. If you were absent or being dumb, you still probably got the 100. I never met anyone in that class who did get a 0, so I don't even know if that ever happened. But it genuinely would have been harder to get a 0 than a 100. You would think at some point the school would step in and be like, hey coach, if you're gonna continue working at this school, we need you to actually teach something, like even just a little bit. But Coach Matthews was so good at coaching the team that as long as they kept winning, the school didn't care one bit about what was going on inside the classrooms. Every day I miss Coach Matthews' class. But if there's one class I really don't miss, it was my 7th grade science class. Because for some reason, there are some teachers out there who wake up in the morning with one thing on their mind, and that is to make sure their students' lives are as miserable miserable as possible. It's like they can't sleep unless they know every student is going home after school crying. My 7th grade science teacher, Mrs. Elliott, taught me that some people just want to see the world burn. And she is the subject of the next type of teacher I'm going to talk about, which is the teacher that's on a power trip. If you don't know what I mean by this, let me give you a visualization of what this looks like. Picture a boxing ring, and inside it is the best fighter in the world. If someone tries to come into that ring, they beat them up, punch them until they have no hope left. Now the teacher that's on a power trip, that's the boxer. And the boxing ring is her classroom. And the opponents that come into the ring are the students. Because stepping into Mrs. Elliott's classroom was like stepping into a torture chamber. But at least when you're in one of those, the torture usually stops after a while. This, on the other hand, was never ending. So real quick, I gotta tell you guys this. A couple weeks ago, I'm mid-workout trying to get jacked, but in the middle of my exercise, I feel pain in my chest. Not an emergency, nothing dramatic, but just enough to where I'm like, okay, that doesn't feel normal. So I finish the workout, go home, and just forget about it, thinking I'll just be good tomorrow. But then tomorrow comes, and my chest hurts even more. I give it a couple days to see if it could get better, but it didn't. If anything, it just kept getting worse. Now usually, this would be the time where I just ignore it and hope it could get better on its own. But this time was different, because now, instead of just letting the problem linger and not doing anything to fix it, I use ZocDoc, today's video sponsor. ZocDoc is a free website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors, all based on your own preferences. You can search through 200 plus specialties offered on ZocDoc and see which doctors take your insurance and read reviews from real patients before deciding who's right for you. They have over 150,000 providers across all 50 states, covering everything from primary care to dentistry to dermatology and eye care. You can book in-person or video visits, see real-time availability, and schedule instantly with no phone calls required. And appointments made through ZocDoc typically happen within 24 to 72 hours, sometimes even same day. So if you've ever ignored the doctor because of how annoying the process is, you can check out ZocDoc.com/Tyler Vitelli. The link's in the description. Thanks again to ZocDoc for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to it. Let me explain to you just how horrible this class was. You couldn't use the bathroom during class, ever. Didn't matter if it was an emergency, didn't matter if you were sick, it did not matter if you quite literally pooped on the floor. Because she had this whole thing about how,
in the real world, you can't just leave whenever you want.
but whatever. And then when it came to where we sat in class, of course, she assigned seats, but she had a strategy to make sure we sat in the worst spot possible. If she saw you even smile talking to the person sitting next to you, she would immediately move you next to someone you didn't talk to. The whole point of her class was to make sure that you did not enjoy it. Of course, the most terrifying part of being in her class was on test day, because cheating in that class was impossible. If you even dared to turn your head 1 degree in either direction, you better kiss any chance at college away, because she would fail you right there. I remember one time, a kid sneezed during a test, and she accused him of cheating. Yeah, because of a sneeze. He promised he wasn't cheating, but she didn't trust him, so she made him retake the test alone in the hallway. When he tried to explain that he just sneezed, she said,
I've been teaching for 15 years. I know all the tricks that you guys try to pull by now.
Looking back at it though, I low-key respect how dedicated she was to being a villain. Like, she was really a D1 rage baiter. And don't get me wrong, I never want to go inside that class again, but I can tip my cap to anyone who's that committed to something. Now, that science class was bad, but at least after the school year ended, I never had to worry about it again. But unfortunately, there are some teachers you are stuck with for life, whether you like it or not. And it's all because you know this teacher outside of school. For me, it was Mrs. Patterson, my friend's mom. She taught some medical class I don't remember the name of, and at first, I thought it was gonna be chill. Like, she was cool outside of school. I went to their house for sleepovers many of times. So surely this would be an advantage for me, right? It was not an advantage. First of all, I think because everyone knew that I was best friends with her son, she went out of her way to not show me any favoritism, which, okay, I respect, but also, come on, throw me a bone. Like, if I asked a question, she'd be more strict about making me figure it out myself than she was with other students. But the real awkwardness came from the fact that since I was friends with her kid, my mom was friends with her. So if I was misbehaving in class, my mom knew about it. If I was talking to a girl in that class, she'd tell my mom about it. That never happened, let's be real. But if it did happen, my mom would have known. Point was, I felt like I always had to have my guard up here because she was watching everything I did and reporting it back to my mom. The worst part was how this affected me outside of school, because now whenever I would try going to Jake's house to hang out, if his mom was there, I tried to hide from her. I didn't know whether she was gonna be cool mom or scary teacher, so I just didn't want to get involved with it at all. It actually started to put a strain on mine and Jake's friendship because I started saying no more and more whenever he would ask me to come over. Not because I was busy, but I just didn't want to go to the house where my teacher lived, unless it was Mrs. Rodriguez's house. Once again, hit me up. I do have to say though, as much as this class made me super uncomfortable, my friend's mom was a pretty good teacher. I got a solid grade in that class if I remember correctly, but I can't say the same about this next type of teacher, which is the one who just straight up sucks at teaching. Not even trying to say this in a mean way. Like, this type of teacher was usually really nice and trying their best. They just had no idea what they were doing. A lot of the time, it would be an old person who was alive for both World War II and Prime Fortnite. So by this time, their brain just could not function anymore. And the question with these teachers is, why don't they just retire? They're already 105 years old. Go travel the world. Enjoy your life. Get out of the classroom for once. Well, the reason they don't retire is because teaching is what gives them purpose. Teaching is what gets them out of bed in the morning. Without teaching, they don't know what to spend their days doing. They simply love teaching. And teachers also get paid like $4 an hour, so they probably just didn't have enough money to retire. But the other part sounds sweeter, so let's just go with that. Now, I had a teacher like this in school named Mrs. Campbell. She taught algebra, but there was only one problem with being in her class. She had no idea how to do algebra. Literally no clue. Talking about her chocolate chip cookie recipe? Yeah, she could do that, but finding the circumference of a right triangle? No chance. She was a lovely person, always positive, always encouraging, but when she tried to explain certain concepts, it was like she was speaking a different language. She'd write something on the board, and her hands were shaking, so you couldn't even really read it, but this is what she would do.
So if you multiply 3 times the x variable and then find the square root of it, then you get, who's hungry?
She'd pause, erase what she just wrote, rewrite it slightly differently, then look at the textbook to confirm that she did it right. She never did it right. She'd teach the same concept 5 different ways, and somehow all of them were wrong. I remember spending an entire week on quadratic equations, a concept I didn't even know existed, and by the end of it, I was more confused than when we started. Really think about that. I understood a concept more when I had never heard about it than after she started teaching it to us. But you could never be mad at her because she was so nice. She genuinely cared about whether we were learning. She'd stay after class to help, offer extra credit, and try her best. But unfortunately, her best just kind of sucked. Her class definitely made me dumber, which is pretty impressive for me. But there would be kids who would take advantage of this, because since the teacher was so out of the loop, you could tell her that she made a mistake grading your assignment, and she would just trust you. There were students all the time who would absolutely bomb a test, then go up to her and say she put the score in wrong, and she would just assume they were telling the truth and change it. Mrs. Campbell, if you're still kicking, which I hope you are, I want you to know we appreciate you, okay? We know you tried your best. It's time to sail into the sunset now. Go to Fiji, go to the Bahamas. Just enjoy yourself, girl. You deserve it. Now, I kind of mentioned that you could manipulate Mrs. Campbell into getting whatever grade you wanted because she didn't know any better. But old people aren't the only type of teachers you can do this to, because there's another type of teacher you just have to feel bad for. And I'm talking about the pushover. The teacher who tried so hard to get respect, but had absolutely none. They didn't run the class. The students did. Kids would be on their phones, talking to each other, going to the bathroom for 30 minutes at a time. And for some reason, the teacher just didn't have the ability to do anything about it. No one feared them at all. I actually cringed being in these classes because sure, I liked messing around and going on my phone during the whole class too, but seeing the teacher try to correct kids and them just not caring kind of made me feel bad for them. I've been in a class like this before where the teacher was pretty much invisible. Anything he said or did was irrelevant because none of the students cared. There was one time where he was doing a presentation about the Industrial Revolution, and this kid was talking, so he went,
"Garrett, please stop talking while I'm teaching."
And Garrett just went,
Yeah, so I would. You're not my boss, shut up. So anyways, yeah.
Funny thing about that is, in this scenario, he pretty much is your boss. Like, that's literally his role. But you want to know what was really tragic about being in that class? The teacher said that after this year, they were going to go retire and celebrate by exploring the world for the next whole year. Well, fast forward to the end of the school year, and we were such a bad class that he said he couldn't go out on a year that horrible. So he came back for one more year to try again. And then, in the middle of that year, COVID happened. So he never got to travel the world. Legend has it, he's still teaching to this day, and no one is paying attention. Here's some teachers I think we've all had before, but I didn't think were as prominent as the other ones. Number 1, the oversharer. This teacher is absolutely goated to have. All you gotta do is get them talking about their weekend or their hobby outside of school, and they will. I made a post asking you guys for your wildest school confessions because I figured we'd get the classics. I cheated on a quiz. I called my teacher mom on accident. But what I got instead didn't feel like confessions. No, these felt like future court cases. Because based off these things I'm about to read to you, I'm pretty sure that some of your schools were literally just GTA Online servers. But before we even start, I need to make something very clear. These are your guys' stories, okay? Not mine. So if something sounds insane or freaky, don't blame me. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're starting off with one that just made me pause and stare at the wall for a couple minutes after reading it. This confession felt like the opening scene of a Netflix documentary with how cinematic it was. They titled it, "I Accidentally Caused a School Lockdown." Here we go. I hid 6 small Bluetooth speakers in the ceiling tiles of every classroom I had, thinking that it would be funny to play ghost sounds during class. But fast forward to Friday, I'm in the library during my free period, and I open a mobile shooter game. I totally forgot my phone was still synced to all 6 speakers across the wing, and as soon as the match started, the entire hallway exploded with the sound of gunfire and reloading. If I heard those sounds while in class, I would have jumped out the window. Every man for themselves at that point. Because the speakers were inside the ceiling, it sounded like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I heard a teacher down the hall scream, "Run!" and the lockdown alarm started blaring. I cannot imagine the horror of a school lockdown starting and knowing I caused it. Or actually, I guess I can because I did that too. But anyways, I had to sit there in the library, heart racing, frantically trying to disconnect my Bluetooth while hearing people cry. I eventually ran to my homeroom so I wouldn't look suspicious, and 20 minutes later, I heard the main entrance doors get kicked. I don't know what's about to happen next, but dog, you are cooked. We watched through the door window as police officers in full tactical gear and dogs ran through the hall with weapons out. Not the dogs. It was a 3-hour lockdown. They never found the speakers, and I graduated without anyone ever knowing it was my phone. What do you mean they never found the speakers? So a SWAT team just pulled up to your school with dogs, looked for 3 hours trying to find where those sounds came from, and then they were just like,
Oh well, we tried. Anyways, who's hungry?
if one thing went wrong in this scenario, you wouldn't even be here typing this message. You'd be in a documentary. First of all, you hid 6 Bluetooth speakers in ceiling tiles. Why? And I know you said it was because you wanted to play ghost sounds, but you didn't even say whether you actually ended up doing that. Also, how did you even manage to sneak the Bluetooth speakers in tiles without getting caught? I know I said my friends and I used to stick paper airplanes in the ceiling, but that was hard enough to do without getting caught. This is next level. But based off reading this story, I know exactly what type of person you are. And that is a rich person, because you could afford 6 Bluetooth speakers. Either you went on the show Wheel of Fortune and actually won, or your parents are rolling in dough. So congratulations on that. But just imagine being the poor teacher in one of these classes where the speakers are. You randomly hear gunshots and you're freaking out trying to find the source of where it's coming from, while all the other students are going crazy. Like I've said before, if I was a student in one of these classes, I'm jumping out the window. And if there's not a window, you're gonna find me in those vents. The one thing I'm not doing is staying in that class. This is how the teacher probably reacted in this scenario.
So as you guys can see, oh my gosh, what is that? Everyone get under their desks now. Remain calm.
This is how the kid who thinks he's the main character probably reacted.
Don't worry, everyone. I'll save the day.
How the kid who's deaf reacts. How the kid who's secretly a robot reacted. Oh no, what is happening? But whoever sent this confession made one small mistake, because you mentioned that you graduated without anyone knowing that it was your phone. But guess what? I know it was your phone, and I've contacted your school and local law enforcement, and there will be people coming to your house very shortly to arrest you. Nah, I'm just kidding. But the one question I do have is, are those speakers still in the walls today? Because I low-key need some new ones, you know what I'm saying? Now yes, that was only the first confession. And after that one, you would think the next confessions would be lighter. Wrong. Because here's the next one. I convinced my best friend to throw a chair at my old English teacher. And one time I made laxative cookies and passed them out to my class. Okay, now correct me if I'm wrong, but by the way you typed this, it really sounded like you were bragging about doing it. Almost as if you were proud of this. And if that's the case, you're a villain! You convinced your best friend to throw a chair at your old English teacher? Which means you didn't even throw the chair yourself? Your role was somehow even worse. How did you even convince your friend to do this? What, do you have superpowers or something? Are you just like that one girl in the show Gen V where you can put your hand on someone and whatever you tell them to do, they'll listen? I need to know how this story ended. Was the teacher okay? Because I've had a chair thrown at me before. Don't ask. But let me tell you, I barely survived it. So if I was an old man and I got hit by one, it would probably look like this. But it didn't end there. No, because then you casually added,
Oh yeah, also one time I made laxative cookies and passed them out to my class.
the one thing I keep trying to figure out when reading these stories is, what do you gain from this? Even if you were like,
Oh, there's this one kid in my class I really don't like.
why would you do this to the whole class? I feel like, if anything, the person who is negatively affected by this the most is you. Because the class probably just sounded like this for a week straight. Oh my God. I've tried laxatives before, and we all know what happened when I did that.
There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting. There's an explosion going off in my stomach. Mile 3, I'm sprinting.
Dorasha subscribed. Belinda subscribed. Fib subscribed. Giselle subscribed. Cecily subscribed.